I'm Ruben Navarrette. Welcome back to the Latino Paradox. I'm here with my friend Arnold Torres. Our topics today, the effect that Donald Trump has on Latinos in particular, Americans in general, is brought to light by two very topical issues. Two things are happening in the news right now. One is the ongoing NFL over brouhaha over the national anthem, and how some players are in fact sitting or kneeling for the national anthem, and now others are linking arms during the national anthem, and how this all started because the president taunted the NFL players and owners in a speech in Huntsville, Alabama last week, a week ago actually. And the other topic that's very much in the news is the crisis in Puerto Rico, which after Hurricane Maria has been left without power. There are people literally who are dying, who are without food and water. And the president has once again made things worse by responding to criticism of his administration in a personal way by going after the mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico. So in that regard, the effect, Arnold, of both these stories is we're getting a really up-close look at the effect that Donald Trump has on people and on public debate, and he seems to throw both of those things into turmoil. So here on the Latino Paradox, we try to wrestle with a series of questions. Why do you think this is happening? Is the first question.
I think every time he goes to speak to a public gathering, to one of his rallies, there's usually it's been after a bad week, a bad month, a string of criticisms. I think that's where he was at. I think he was in a difficult campaign in Alabama, supporting the establishment candidate versus the Steve Bannon candidate. And I think he wanted to throw red meat to his audience, which is what he does all the time. Anytime he's out there, he's throwing red meat. And this was a perfect red meat scenario for him to do. And that's exactly what he did. He's very good at that. The reality is that a lot of people see that, but a lot of people defend it because it isn't really the substance. It's always the whistles that people respond to. And this was just another whistle that he has effectively conjured up for his base, and they're running with it very effectively.
So I think this is happening because it goes to two character traits that Donald Trump has. I would say they are both character flaws. The first one is, as evidenced by the NFL, he does have this tendency to think in the short term. All he cared about was pleasing that crowd in Huntsville, Alabama. He didn't really think about or care much about the consequences of his remarks. He has an improv kind of feature where he thinks on his feet. He goes off the script. It drives John Kelly, the chief of staff, and others crazy. It's clear that when he was making those remarks, he was just speaking from the heart without a script, talking about how he felt. Ironically, he touched a nerve because something like 60% of Americans agree with him that you should not sit or kneel for the national anthem. The NFL got the message, which is why they're now pretty much saying that's not going to happen anymore. They'll find other ways of demonstrating. The other character flaw, as evidenced by his comments with the mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico, is he takes criticisms personally, and he responds in kind on Twitter. And that's another deep flaw. When you're the president of the United States, you have to have much thicker skin, and this president has a very thin skin. Our second question.
I don't think it's anything about. I don't think it's about anything that's presidential. I think this individual targets two groups of people, and they're both people of color. And he does it in front of his base. Even the
I disagree with that. That's not true. That's not true.
Well,
he attacked Megyn Kelly, who's not a person of color. He attacked Mika Brzezinski about her facelift. That's not a person of color. He attacked John McCain, a war veteran, not a person of color. He has this tendency whenever he's attacked by anybody, they could be a Martian. It doesn't matter who they are. He goes after them in a very personal way, and he did again. In this case, it's convenient for the narrative.
He goes after non-minorities in one different way, and he goes after minorities in a very different way. And that different way is that he hands a great deal more to his base, because his base is very focused on those issues. You and I may disagree.
Yeah, you've forgotten how brutal he was with Lindsey Graham, who's a white male. He kept calling him under 2% Lindsey. He went after Rand Paul. He went after Mitch McConnell. He went after Jeff Sessions. I could give you a long list of white men
Sessions on his cabinet, And he complimented Mitch McConnell just yesterday when he was asked the question, could he continue to work and does he like working with them? So this is the point, and I understand what you're saying, and I wouldn't disagree to some extent.
We're going to have to do this, Arnold.
Stop. The fact of the matter is that he continues.
Let's finish this, but we're not going to get to the other two questions. So let's forget the other two questions and finish this conversation. Tell me about Donald Trump and what he's doing wrong.
Well, I think what Donald Trump continues to do is that when he is not doing well, whether he's criticized or whether he isn't, he always needs to have somebody that he can focus on and take the focus off of what he's not doing well or the criticism that's been given to him.
Right.
In this case, you had the mayor of San Juan pleading with anyone that would hear her, as she put it, to come and help. And she finally said,
"We're in agreement." Why is there an argument there? We're in agreement. I said the same thing. He has a thin skin.
No, because he wouldn't have said that, in my opinion, and he wouldn't have made it a point to go after Puerto Rico as a whole. In other words, he provided no context to what makes Puerto Rico a unique problem, only to excuse what he was not doing the way he should have done it. Okay. As he put it, they're in the water, big water.
So this is where you and I disagree. If you pay close attention to Donald Trump and everything he's said in the last 2 years, there have been plenty of times where he's attacked white males very aggressively. This is not a race thing with Puerto Rico.
Yeah, but he does not attack them because they're white males. He attacks them because he doesn't like them and he thinks that they're not as rich as he is, or they just don't agree with him. In the case of the football players, in the case of Puerto Rico, there is no doubt, at least in my mind, that there are always these racial overtones that he injects. There is no doubt that he is doing the little whistle, and some days he does a very overt whistle.
So this is why this is not
a whistle. You can't do a whistle with other whites except to say they're Democrats. When he's doing that with Latinos and with blacks, it's because they're Democrats and because there are a number of other things.
So I disagree. This is something that Latinos sometimes do, and I've seen it my whole life, where we see things that aren't there. You think somehow subliminally he's sending a message, this dog whistle. He has been disrespectful to men and women, to Republican and Democrat, to white male and Latinas and all sorts of things. And there are plenty of cases, like I said, where it goes after white males, and you're seeing something that isn't there because you do not like Trump, and nor do I, but you somehow think that every single story has to fit the template that Trump is a racist, that he's particularly harsh on people of color, as you say. And in this particular case, it fits because the Latina mayor of Puerto Rico is Latina. But in the other 10 cases that happened last week where he went after other people, including a lot of white people, it all feeds this narrative, as I said, that he's got a very thin skin. He adjudicates these matters on Twitter, and he really shouldn't do that. But a more pressing problem is there was a story just this week on The Hill that said what you and I have been saying quite for a long time, which is that Democrats are foolhardy if they keep making this about Trump. Trump lives rent-free in the minds of liberals and of Democrats. They do not come forward with their own plans about what to do. They're ensuring his reelection because they don't have a plan, because they spend no time crafting an alternative plan. They simply make it all about Trump.
You and I agree on that point. That's not what we're discussing.
So that's what we're doing here.
No, I don't disagree with what you just said. What I disagree with
this segment is the Trump segment.
What I disagree with is very simply, this individual, when he makes comments about people of color, he knows what he's doing with his base. He knows because the base responds very well, and they in turn come back with racial comments. They come back with, their behavior is a response, is the kind of response that you give to those kinds of whistles. Now, if their response really was just to come back and make personal attacks on the individuals, then you would be correct, in my opinion, because it's about the personality, as you've said, the individual, regardless of color. But that's not how his base responds back. That's not how his base comes back to.
Well, that comes back to skin color. Though. If you read his tweets about the mayor of San Juan, there was nothing racial to it. He didn't go at race. He didn't talk about her ethnicity at all.
He talked about the fact that you had a people that were depending on everybody except themselves, which is the image that a lot of white people have about minorities, that we're always dependent on somebody else in these types of situations.
You don't think it's true in this case, that San Juan is waiting for the federal government to rescue them? They talked about sending in the army. All I've heard from Puerto Rico is send help, send help, send help. This is not to say other parts of the country wouldn't respond the same way, but I don't see how he's wrong that they're looking to the federal government for rescue.
Because they're an island. They're completely separated. They don't have the roads like Texas and Arizona and Florida had. There's a lot of logistical and geographical reasons why the island of Puerto Rico is saying what it's saying. And it makes perfect sense
but
under
that's
the
also feeds into what
circumstances of
he's
what
saying.
they're in.
That
But he
feeds into what
doesn't
he's
qualify. He doesn't qualify any of these things, Ruben. What he does is that he just throws it out because he knows his base is going to say, yeah, that's true. That's how those people believe. What did he say about the football players? Oh, they're afraid. The owners are afraid of them. And yet, look what the owners did. The owners came in and said, this is how we're going to do it from now on. They were so afraid that they decided they're going to lock arms as opposed to do anything on kneeling. So, again, we have a very fundamental disagreement of how we see this guy. I wish that I didn't see it in this way. But this is repetitive. It is consistent. Yeah. It is a behavior that simply, in my opinion, cannot be denied.
So here it is, 10.5 minutes. The segment's over. We've done this. This has now been the Trump version of Latino Paradox. He's taken over this segment like he's taken over so much of our subconscious as Latinos. We've left ourselves once again in a disempowered and weakened state because everything has to do with Trump and how we react to him. I'm Ruben Navarrette, and it's been our pleasure to be with you. Until next time, this is the Latino Paradox.